Why am I out here? I live in a condo and it's just not conducive to filming for free content. So today I thought I would just give you an update on the work on the bike. I live in a condominium and it's just weird for me to be filming in front of my building in a parking stall. You know, oh, why didn't you own a farm and get an acreage and get out of the city? Well, because that's not realistic. I work in an office and I live in the city, and so there's a requirement for me to live within the means that I have. I grew up on a farm just over there, actually. 120 acres, cows, sheep, horses. You know, learned to drive a 3-speed tractor when I was about 6. Had many dirt bikes. Had a 1977 Suzuki GS 450 that I fixed up in Alberta, but never had a license for it. So this one I've had for now a year, and I'm going to give you a rundown on what it's like to own a pre-owned Suzuki DRZ 400. 400? Yeah, 400. Yes, I live in a condo. I work in an office. I don't have the luxury of owning friggin' acres and acres. They're making that less and less affordable here in the great socialist utopia of Canada. But that's by the by. Let me talk about the bike. The DRZ 400 that I've had for a year and what I've done to it. So starting with the brake rotor, when I was first riding, I had a bunch of stuff strapped on here and it fell off in a pretty rugged trail section, and a carabiner got jammed up in here, and a rock actually, and a gas can, spare gas tank. Anyway, so I thought that it bent the rotor because as I was driving it was kind of squeaking as the wheels going around, so I bought a new rotor. Probably didn't need that, but it's nice to have, and it's an upgrade from the stock. Just last week I've installed this Yoshimura full exhaust. The original exhaust was just clattery, falling apart. I'm pretty happy with it. It's marginally quieter. You notice it as you're going down the road. Actually, at idle it's probably the same decibel level, but it's pretty slick. It looks much nicer than the rusted can that was on there before, held together with duct tape and gear clamps. Today, and for the past number of days, I've been replacing the speedometer gear cable. I'll show you when I get back. Inside this gear housing there is a worm drive. You can see it goes in that direction from the cable down, and it interlocks with a worm gear that spins with the wheel. And that worm gear is made out of plastic. And so if there's any sort of impedance on the cable, which runs up to the speedometer housing, if there's any sort of impedance, then that plastic that's in the gear housing just seizes, and the worm drive, which is metal, actually wears all the teeth down and you stop getting speed. With this bike I use the speedometer to measure my mileage or kilometerage. so that I know how much fuel I've used. Oh, that was the second upgrade, was a larger fuel tank. I think it's, I don't know how many liters that is. It costs about $28 to fill, and it runs me about 230 kilometers. Although that might be off because the speedometer is off. I originally had it at 350 kilometers, but who knows. I have upgraded the sprocket and the chain, or the drive chain itself. New rear sprocket, new front sprocket. The rear sprocket that was on here was a couple of more teeth, meaning that it was better for highways, top speed, but I wanted to make sure that everything was just stock and running properly, so this came with the chain and the cogs. I flushed the coolant as soon as I got the bike because it was rusted. I've added a windscreen, Lexan plexiglass. That's all it is. Allegedly bulletproof. I've added these halogens because the light that's here, although this is aftermarket as well, is lackluster. Like, you can't even see anything at night. So I added these trail lights. I've added a fan. So here's the switches for the lights. I'm going to turn it on and I can show you. So yeah, so it's pretty bright. Yeah, so I've added a fan switch with this cool F-16 tow missile, heat seeker missile launch control button. It's a good fan. The bike would overheat occasionally if I was stuck in traffic, or if I was doing technical off-road stuff. So the fan was key. I added a quad lock mount, and I've also added a battery gauge with USB charging. Not sure what happened there. I put in a high output stator, and it puts out 14.7 while the bike's running. I've done a lot of tweaking with the carburetor. You can see from the other videos that I've taken the carburetor out, put it back in a number of times, and the air screw up in behind there actually fell out a couple of times, and so I've ordered another one and a JD jet kit, which I'll be putting in being it. But what I've done is I've added a solar panel so that when the bike's just sitting there, it actually tops it up. Yeah, it's a little bit cumbersome, but it gives me peace of mind that if I need that extra little bit of juice to crank it, because it is a hard start in the morning, then I can do that. The Tusk panniers. I got these essentially when I first got the bike, with aluminum panniers. If I had known better, I would have not purchased the aluminum panniers because they're just too heavy. Although they are like bomb-proof, EMP-proof. I've got my ham radio in there. If and when that EMP hits. What else? So, as I was driving the other day, I slipped through the intersection. Well, lost traction, let's say. And I thought, that's strange because it was a dry day. And so I pulled over and oil started spewing out. Right. Yeah, so pulled the bike over and it was spewing oil. And what had happened is the shifting lever seal had failed. And so what I did is I limped the bike home. I was actually going to go up kiteboarding and limped the bike home, and I went to a auto parts place and picked up a bunch of O-rings, and I stacked 3 O-rings. So I stacked a small O-ring, a larger O-ring, and then another small O-ring, and sandwiched them together. And it's been holding since. So just as a FYI, if you do actually lose one of these seals, O-rings will work in a pinch. What else? Gear clutch cable was replaced. When I bought the bike, the guy I bought it from was like, "Oh no, it's just sticky, you know, no problem." But what actually happened was the cable was jammed inside the housing, and it wasn't getting any leverage. And when I pulled it out, it was actually only, 1 or 2 strands holding it in. So, yeah. What else? I've made bags for it. I've got bags. Actually, I'll go over my tools here. This is just a bag I keep on here with the ratchet straps and the on the bike toolkit. So what about the bike after a year? I love the bike. Absolutely love the bike. I like the color, Ninja Black, because ninjas are awesome. I don't care what anyone says. I don't need anyone who's overweight sitting on their podcast telling me how they hate ninjas. But would I buy a used bike? What I'm finding is that this bike is probably nearing the life cycle of the parts. And so it's required a lot of finicky maintenance. And I'm pretty mechanically inclined, but A, I don't have a garage, and B, it's finicky. I actually took off the timing cover and checked the cam clearance, and it's tight, which is, it's knocking a bit, which probably means that the cylinder's going and will need to be replaced. It's a huge job. I can do it. It's just a matter of money, but I got to disassemble the entire engine. I got to get the parts. I got to do that in my condo. I don't really feel like doing that in my condo. I paid $4,500 for this bike. It's fine. I didn't have a bike, and it was sort of like, it's got some aftermarket parts like the front fender and the headlight, bush guards and stuff like that. But to be honest, I think I overpaid. I think the guy who I bought this from knew that it was at the end of its life. But I mean, look at it. Who else has a G.I. Joe bike? It's friggin' sweet, and I love it, and I ride it every day. So to me, it's worth the time and the money. Okay, so let's go over tools. So after finicking with this bike for so long, I kind of really narrowed down the tools that I need. These are the tools that I actually carry with me on the bike. I've got a battery pack because I was having problems with the bike. I also made this pouch for it. Just actually got Velcro so that I can stick it on the back of my bike, and it'll stick in place on the Velcro that's on the bag. Just a simple folded pouch. Watch my tutorial on sewing. So a pair of small vice grips, which I can use as a clutch replacement, or some sort of handle replacement, if need be. I got this little socket wrench set for the DRZ. There's only really two. It's metric. You need 10 and 8 mil for most of the bolts to access, to take off the fairing, to take off the panels, to take, to access things, to get the batteries off. You need a screwdriver and 10 and 8 mil. There are some 12 mil bolts, but you can use a crescent wrench. So I've got a small crescent wrench and a number 6 hex, I believe, and this is important for taking the seat off. So with this small ratchet, which was about 30 bucks at Canadian Tire, there is an adapter for the 10 mil and an adapter for bits. So these bits came with it. Hex pretty much can take apart the bike with these as well. I want to have everything compact as possible. There's an adapter for the bits so that I can put it on an extension. I bought the extension, so when together with the adapter, I've actually got a full, or at least a set of tools where I can take the bike apart. Jumper cables to go with the battery, an adapter which plugs into the solar power plug, and an extra USB cable. Right, so that is the kit that goes on the bike. Now, the kit that I actually use to work, if I'm actually doing any other heavy duty work, same bag setup. This actually fits in here. This is the kickstand, also invaluable. There's the L-shaped one where you can put your foot and lever it, but I find if you just push the bike over, stick this under the bash plate or wherever, it actually works really well. I've got a tire tool. Let me just move this. I've got a tire tool. So if I'm off-road and I got a flat, I need to change the tire, this is quite helpful. In conjunction with the tire irons, I'd like to have tire irons with a wheel wrench on it, but these are the ones that I bought at the time. Electrical tape, a small hacksaw, lighter with thread and a needle and an elastic, a spare multi-tool, scissors, knife, that kind of thing, just in case, Allen keys, a magnet, this is actually quite important, a metal or base file, needle nose. Some guy just came by here telling me that there's bear in the area, so if I start running, that's why. Got wide crescent wrench. With this crescent wrench I can take off the wheel lugs. I've got a pair of vice grips, not like the dinky hand ones. These are actually quality brand new vice grips. Some extra bits. So this is a 1/4 inch and this is 3/8. I don't know. Anyways, this is a standard socket with a reducer for 1/4 inch, so I can use the bits for both. This also has an adapter for screwdriver bits, and an adapter for a 1/2 inch driver for the wheel. I've got steel weld compound in a new tube. I haven't actually used this. I have a punch for taking out bearings if need be. Zip ties. This is actually a 5/8 bit, so nothing on the bike is imperial, but when you are doing the timing, you need to crank the crankshaft, and this 5/8 bit will actually work to do that. I've got a couple of larger sockets and a 1/2 inch extension. These are for the wheel. Nice to have, but they're heavy. They're good for pounding out bearings, but they're sort of an additional thing that, you know, so 24 mil for the rear axle, and I believe it's 30 for the front. This is a, what is this? Spark plug 5/8 spark plug bit, and with this extension you can actually fit this in, seat it on the spark plug, get this in there, and then use the vice grips, because the down tube under the fuel tank actually gets in the way of taking the spark plug out. So you need a system that is capable of getting in there. Okay, so that's the those are the toolkits. All right, so one other thing I wanted to show you. I got this tool here. So the air fuel screw being where it is with the carburetor, what I find works is this flexible ended micro driver. So you can actually get this up into the carburetor, or the air fuel screw, and I've marked the knurled edge, and so you can actually count revolutions as you're turning this, and it's got to be 2 out. And with my carburetor, I don't know what's going on with it, so I gotta always be adjusting it. But one thing I wanted to show you is that the reason the gear for the speedometer wasn't working was whoever installed the dash unit had put in the wrong length of cable, and so what was happening was the cable goes into this little doohickey, and it actually spins the let me see if I can do it here. So you can see that it actually spins that wheel, right? The cable comes in, spins that, but what happens is if the cable is too long, it pushes this up, and here there's a sensor, and it's counting the gaps, right? That's how you get your speed, is it's counting how many gaps go by. But you can see here, if this gets pushed up, then it actually just starts wearing away on the top and the bottom. And on the this is the one that I took out. I actually ordered another dash. This cost about $400, so not cheap. This is actually an American miles per hour gauge, so I had to actually swap this out with my working gauge and put this guy in. But in order to fix this, because once the bearing is shot, and I didn't want to order another one, right? Once it's shot, it's always pushing up against this. You need to have a way to get it down, and so I actually developed or machined a piece of metal, hard sort of hanger material, and I looped it around, drilled a hole, I put it through one of these holes here, and then actually right through the housing, and it wraps around and kind of pushes against the plastic so that as it's spinning, it's pushing this wheel into its correct position, right? So that as it's in the bike now, it spins freely in the correct alignment between the two sensors. Come on, focus. So this entire system seems just terribly designed, starting with the plastic drive gear in the actual assembly, and then having this. I mean, yeah, I guess you should have the right length of cable, but having no restrictor, no mechanical restriction other than just the bearings, means that inevitably this will fail. And I don't even think there's bearings in there. There might be a bearing, but it's just really poorly designed. So come on, Suzuki, like, step up your speedometer game. Anyways, that's the end of it. Get yourself one of these. Cheap. Don't buy that stupid specialty tool. Cheap.